A client hired me to replace this builder grade bathroom slab mirror with a new double lit vanity mirror medicine cabinet with shelves. It's a whole thing. So today I'm going to show you how I go about doing this in case you wanted to do something similar and you don't have to hire somebody like me. So naturally the first step is to remove the existing mirror, and in this case it actually has an outlet kind of right in the middle of it, so I had to remove the mirrored cover plate off of that. And then from there, anytime you're going to be removing a mirror or a big piece of glass like this, you want to tape the hell out of it, because if it shatters it's going to be a nightmare. So I always like to tape the hell out of it just in case before I try to remove it, and thankfully in this case they didn't glue it to the wall, which happens more often than you think. So pulling it was actually relatively easy. Just had a couple clips at the top and then a little track that it was sitting in the bottom, so I just pulled those out. And that gives us our first look at the blank wall behind it. So we've got a couple drywall anchors to pull, and that's about it. But before we start any installation, we need to scan this wall and figure out what's going on. There's going to be a lighted mirror over both sinks, and then in the middle there's going to be two shelves. So the nice thing about this is obviously we have power for the lights, but we also have an outlet here. The mirror has built-in lighting, so it needs to be wired. But if I were to put it on the switch with the lights above, it would only be able to be turned on and off with the lights itself. Meaning that the mirror itself has a power button on it, but if I were to wire it to the light switch, in the event that this light switch was off, they wouldn't be able to turn on the mirror. So what we've decided to do is wire to this outlet. Now, what I need to do is then open up the wall area here so that we can get a wire fished into here and wire everything together. I'm hoping that I can do it in such a way as to not have to do any drywall patch, because there will be shelving back here and the shelving has a mirrored back on it. So if I can cut in this area and keep it above the outlet and just have the shelving, then obviously then there's no drywall repair to be done. So obviously we know there's electrical in this wall, so that's an issue, making sure that we're drilling into, first of all, we want to make sure we have studs. So we have a stud finder, and we're going to try to mount everything to studs as much as possible. Also have some drywall anchors in the event we can't hit them. But the other thing is, because this is a vanity, there is going to be a vent pipe in the wall that goes out to the roof for these sinks somewhere in here. So just because you're drilling into the wall and hitting something hard doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a stud. It means that you could potentially be into the vent pipe, which would be a bad thing. So I also have another tool. This is called a Wallabot, and a Wallabot allows you to scan the wall, and it will show you where the electrical and where the plumbing are in this wall. So we're going to scan the wall once I mount the bracket here. We're going to scan the wall and just take a look and see where everything is. Unfortunately, where we need this first bracket, there's not a stud here. So I'm going to be using these drywall anchors, which are rated for 143 pounds each, so they should be plenty strong. Then I had to climb up on the cabinet and install the top brackets, which is basically the same process. And although it's nice to work alone, sometimes it would be nice to have somebody to hold something for you. And after loosely putting in the first mirror so it can still slide side to side a little bit to dial in later, then I could start to mock up the other cabinets around it. This is a modular cabinet system from Lowe's, and if you're interested in learning more about it, I'll place a link to it in the description. And now that we've got half of it put together, we know exactly where we can cut open this wall to start figuring out our electrical layout. Now this is why when you're cutting into drywall, you always want to be very careful and cut very shallow, only about as you really don't want to cut more than the drywall. So if you're going to be using a tool like this, make sure that you're kind of doing it on an angle and just kind of cutting very shallow. And here's why. Because even though I used that Wallabot, right? And I was looking for where the vent stack was and all that, and I couldn't find it. Well, look right here. See that? That's the vent pipe for the sink that I told you was in the walls before. And if I had cut deep, I would have cut that pipe, and I'd have a new set of problems on my hand. But because I only cut shallow, and I made sure to really kind of just barely cut a ½ inch worth of drywall, I didn't cut it, right? It's about a ½ inch back. So if I had plunge cut it like this, I would have dug into that pipe all the way up, and then I would have had a headache. Now here's where we have our first kind of issue, Not really, it's a little bit of an issue, but it's not a big deal. So we have this wire that came with the mirror. There's going to be a second mirror on this side, so I know I'm going to have the same issue. but we don't have a wire that's going to run all the way down to this outlet. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to run a little piece of wire from this box up into here, and we're going to have to put in a little junction box up in here. And that junction box is going to be where we make our wire connection. So I had to run to the store to get a junction box, and what we need is, there's two different types. There's what's called an old work. This is an old work, meaning that you set it in the drywall and it pinches the drywall, so you don't need to mount it to a stud. And this is called a new work box. This is you nail to the framing. So in this case, I utilized an old work box because I wasn't right on a stud, and I got the other mirror installed. That way I could wire everything at the same time, installed the old work box, ran all the wiring into it to connect everything, put a cover plate over it, and then I could assemble the rest of the cabinets. Once I had everything put together and tied together, then I could kind of slide the whole unit on the bracket to center each mirror over each sink, and then tighten everything in place and lock it down. And here's what it looked like all put together. Now, I did run into a little bit of an issue, and that is with this built-in lighting above. The glass on the fixtures made it nearly impossible if they were to burn out these bulbs in the future to be able to change the bulbs. So I took the glass off, and I recommended that they do change these fixtures out. One, because they won't be able to change the bulbs, and two, because I don't think they really match stylistically now with this modern mirror. So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful if you're going to be tackling a project like this. If you have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.